Good afternoon to everybody. Today I'm glad to talk to you about grant writing. First of all, let me start by illustrating what is the Editage. So is the world foremost academic solution partners to researchers, journals, publishers, institutions, and corporations worldwide. The vision and the mission is really to accelerate the global scientific research communication, helping scholars to break through the confines of geography and language and bridging the gap between authors and peer-reviewed journals to accelerate the process of publishing high-quality research. Editage has over 20 years of experience, more than 1,300 in-house employing. Worldwide, we are a big family of over 2,500 scientific collaborators. We served more than 500,000 researchers worldwide, executed more than 2 million projects, and we are really operating globally, as you can see by these slides, where we are actually executing projects in more than 190 countries. We established over the year over 30 partnerships, and we have been recommended by more than 2,000 journals. But now let's talk a bit about me, so you can see who I am. Although I'm curly rather than with straight hair like in the picture. I took my bachelor and the master degree in chemistry and pharmaceutical technology at the University of Parma in Italy, where I'm from. And then I moved to Spain to take my second master and PhD degree at the Faculty of Medicine in cell biology at the University of Lerida in Spain. So I'm the founder of Diaspora Mundi, which is a network of highly qualified professionals providing scientific services across the African continent to leverage education and science. I'm a group leader at Nova Medical School Research, Nova University of Lisbon in Portugal, where I'm currently talking to you. And I'm a member of the board of directors of the International Society for the Study of Iron in Medicine and Biology, named BioIron. I'm a co-chair of a Canadian NGO operating in West Africa, especially for the development of ocean technical capacity. And I'm a member of the International Committee for Funding Attribution to Research Projects in 10 European countries and 2 outside the European continent. I'm also an editor of international peer-reviewed scientific journals. So let's see what I will talk to you about. So this webinar will focus on what is a grant proposal. So then I will provide some core parts that every grant needs to have, and you must include that in your proposal. I will provide as well 15 key tips for writing a winning grant proposal, and then I will tell you something about how to avoid grant proposal rejection. So, but let's start by defining what is a grant proposal. So a grant proposal is an application that has the purpose to acquire financial aid to allow your research to be performed. So grants are non-repayable funds given out by grant makers, often a governmental department. So every country has the governmental bodies that you can apply to request fundings for your research. It can also be a corporation, because also private entities might sponsor your research, these being biotech or pharma companies or a foundation. for research. And these funds are given to a recipient, which is you, when you apply, and you could belong, your affiliation could be that of a non-profit entity or an educational institution like a university or a research institute or a business, because also the private sector can apply to specific grants, or it can also be an individuals in terms of prizes and awards or fellowship, etc. So to receive a grant, the process of grant writing is required. And when we talk about grant writing, we refer to as either a grant proposal or a grant application. So what is important? It is important to write an effective grant proposal to be awarded, and indeed you need funds to do your research, but remember that funds, since mostly those funds come from public let's say public money, are very difficult to obtain because of the limitation that our current world has in investing in research. So you need therefore to write something that is really persuasive, attractive for the grant committee, that then review your proposal, likes it, and then attributed the funds. So indeed, why is important is because research is expensive, and you really need continuous purchase of reagents, equipment, and so on. You need also students to conduct the experiments, and the graduate life support is provided by these fellowship applications or project applications. And then also because it's beneficial for holding a track tenure position, and it's beneficial also for publication, because your country actually might see that you are contributing to leverage the knowledge that is discovered with your research. So this is a scheme illustrating the grant writing process. So first of all, you need to identify which are your needs and which is the focus of your research, and then define the prospective grants that can follow actually the needs that you describe, and develop a general proposal and a budget that is associated to illustrate how much money you need to conduct the research. And then you might submit or not a letter of inquiry to request further information that possibly create some doubts in when you read the recommendation. And you might even receive a request for formal application. Then you start preparing specific proposals, and you submit it always before the deadline. Remember that these platforms are really strict in terms of deadline. So everything when needs to be uploaded, the platform need to have the time to upload all the file that you are providing. And it happens, unfortunately, that sometimes after a hard work in writing, then yeah, you cannot manage in meeting the deadline, and this is really something that is stressful and disappointed. After that, then the agency reviews the proposal, and then you might receive the letter of award by stating actually that the agency received the proposal, and therefore you pass then to the second phase. Sometimes you might even negotiate multiple awards, but this is not common because what it happens usually is that either you accept or you decline the awards. And then when you get your funds, then you can conduct your research and carry out your project. And at the very end, then you need to provide reports to funding agency to demonstrate what you did with the money that were attributed to you. So therefore, the first thing that you need to really focus on is to identify your needs. So, and you need to ask yourself the following question. Are you undertaking a preliminary or pilot research to develop a full-blown research agenda? Are you seeking fundings for dissertation research, pre-dissertation research, postdoctoral research, experimental research, field work? Because everything actually is different when you apply then for those funds, and specific requirement you might need to follow according to this kind of field. So are you then seeking a stipend so that you can write a dissertation or a book or polish a manuscript? Do you want a fellowship in residence at an institution that you will offer some programmatic support or other resources to enhance your project? Or do you want the fundings for a larger research project that will last for several years and involve multiple staff members or even sometimes multiple research groups in different countries? So you need really to think carefully about the focus of your research, about the topic, which is the topic that might be important to you. Sorry, I'm a bit cold today. So what are the research questions that you are trying to answer? What is the relevance of your research and of the question that you are concerned about? What are your hypotheses? What are your research methods? And why is your research project important? Meaning, which is the relevance, which is the significance? And then, do you plan on using quantitative methods or just qualitative methods or a mixture of both? Will you be undertaking experimental research or clinical research? And do you have the appropriate ethic permission to do so? So this is really something that are the, so it highlights the question that you can pose to yourself, but this is something that as well you need to write about. So it's good that then you address them in your proposal. So finding prospective grants and funding agencies is the second step, right? Which you can do it meanwhile, or sometimes you might be lucky and have a research funding office department in your university that will provide you this kind of information of where to apply for funds. So whether your proposal receives funding will rely on whether your purpose and goals closely match the priority of granting agencies. Remember that every granting agency has pillar for funding specific research. So either you look for the pillars and then you adapt your research to what they are financing. Sometimes it's possible to do that, but sometimes it's not possible, and you would need then to request the funds to other granting agency. Even if you have the most appealing research proposal in the world, if you don't send it to the right institution, then you are unlikely to receive funding. Imagine that you are a biomedical researcher and you are performing studies of malaria infection, which is okay. But the thing is that if you wanted to send your application to an agency that is sponsoring only something related to space devices, to building space devices, so then you don't fit the purpose of the granting agency, and therefore your proposal, even if it's very well written and very well articulated, so then will not be funded by this agency. Okay. So before you start writing, learn as much as you can about which are the pillars that the funding agency is funding. Because as we said before, even a perfectly written proposal outlining an impeccable study design is likely to be rejected if the writer has not taken the trouble to ascertain the mission and objective of the funding agency. And then you need to understand your target audience. So proposals are often read by informal laypersons and researchers from other disciplines rather than subject specialists. So you need to avoid the jargon and subject-specific acronyms. Remember, reviewers are very knowledgeable people, but you are the most knowledgeable in your field because you are carried out experiments every day on that field, and you know extensively the literature of your area. For the reviewer, it might not be the case. Although it might be knowledgeable in the field, it might not know specifically something that you might talk about. And therefore, it needs to learn through the literature to acquire more knowledge. But indeed, the easy you write the grant, then the easy the job is for the reviewer. And then go through the sponsor's guidelines for proposal and writing and see what was already awarded and the way that was written, because that indeed is something useful for you to do. So let's see 9 core parts every grant and the proposals must contain. So first of all, the abstract, because you need to share a concise summary of the proposed research that is written then in a way that make it easy for non-specialists to understand. The introduction, to highlight the practicality and the importance of your research. So this is a state-of-the-art or what is called also background. Research design and methods, to provide the details about your study, like the study plan or the design, the data collection, the methodology that you are using, the reliability of the equipment, which reagents you would like to use to really achieve that goal. And the preliminary studies. The preliminary studies are important to indicate the feasibility of the project, because they show that you already started that research, that your project is based on solid foundation as well, and then that you have the expertise to conduct that research. And study limitation is something that most of the time is not highlighted the way it should, because most of the reviewer might even negatively evaluate your proposal if you don't expand or if you don't insert this paragraph in your grant. And this because if you go from objective 1 to objective 2, if then there is some limitation in objective 1, then you are prevented to continue your research. So in that case, what would you do? So it's very important that this paragraph, and this also is always underestimated. The budget. So you needed to provide an updated outline of expenses required for your study. What are you going to do with that money? Are you going to buy just the reagents and equipment? Are you going to pay the personnel because you need as well more postdocs or technicians to do the job? Or are you doing dissemination of your data, and therefore part of the budget goes to publications? The personnel as well needs to be very well indicated in terms of expertise, in terms of the contribution of each of the team members that participate to your grant proposal and are involved in your research. Because indeed what you need to do is to show that you have the perfect team to conduct the research. So the expertise needs to be distributed among the team to show the complementarity of each member. And then research environment and institutional resources are very important as well, because your institution is also evaluated. If you are belonging to an institution that does not show it has a critical mass, so then it is not fully evaluated and might not get the final optimal score that you might want to have. As well, if you don't state that your institution have state-of-the-art facilities, so then how can a reviewer know that your institution put you in at disposal actually the most modern equipment and facilities they might have? So, and then there might be some appendix because you might include, for instance, any relevant information that you think of um as important to be added to the grant, like if you do surveys, then add a sample of your questionnaire, you might add a recommendation letter, you might add the guarantees ensuring that you have all what you need at your disposal, etc. So let's see them one by one. So what is the abstract? You need actually to write a concise summary of the proposed research, and you need to write it in a way that make it easy for non-specialists to understand what you're doing and which is the study you would like to conduct. So the abstract is the last part that you would like to write, because it's only when you have the idea in your mind that are completely, let's say, packaged in the proposal that you already have written, that then you might want to provide this summary. And remember that most of the reviewers decide whether to attribute a grant just on the summary. So the abstract needs to be the piece of the art of your grant. So it provides the reader with their first impression of your project. They remind the proposal, and the reader might glance at your abstract when making their final recommendation. So it might also serve as their last impression of your project. It should explain the key elements of your research project in the future tense, because you are going to do that research, and it should state the general purpose of your research, the specific goals, the research design, the methodology, and the significance in terms of relevance of the study and the impact also for society, for instance, or in the specific field that you are working on. You need to be as explicit as possible. So really something like this sentence, right? The objective of this study is. So you cannot circle around in the abstract, okay? So the introduction highlights the practicality and importance of your research. So the introduction is really the cornerstone of the entire grant proposal, and it should cover the key element of your proposal, like for instance, the statement of the problem, the purpose of your research, the research goals or objective, the significance of the research, the practical applicability and importance of the research needs to be emphasized, and then you need to state explicitly the specific aim or hypothesis, and it should contain a review of the existing literature, which allows you to explain how your study will fill gaps or correct errors or resolve controversies. So the introduction is what you need to allow the reviewers to say, okay, so they really want to provide this piece of the puzzle with the study that they are conducting. So you really need to provide all the information that the reviewer might need to then understand what what really is your purpose. So the research design and the methods provides all details about your study. So about the design, about the how you collect the data, about which is the methodology that you use to pursue your goals, about the equipment, about the reagents, about the experimental settings that you are then using, the ethical as well permission if you're conducting animal research or with humans, etc. So this section is the basis on which the reviewers judge whether your proposed study will produce the results it promises. And it provides a detailed schedule of the proposed work showing that the time required is feasible. So describe the study population if you're using a human cohort and explain how participants will be recruited or provide the details on incentives for participation, randomization, sample size, etc. So the research design is what allows the reviewers to really understand whether you know what you are doing, because indeed it provides really the extensive methodology and extensive thinking on which is the best technique to achieve your goal. So describe the data collection methods, provide the citations, manufacturer details to show that the technique and the instruments that you are using are reliable and valid. Show that your methods are ethically sound and supplemented with approval from the ethic board. List all variables and mention how they will be used in the analysis, and then provide details on the statistical methods and software to be used. And this part is extremely important because indeed the reviewer needs to be ensured that if you have data, if you collect the data, then they are properly analyzed and properly interpreted. So show them that you know how to do that. And if you don't, just insert a statistician as a team member. So like this, you provide actually that expertise, and the reviewer will see that you have your expertise in your team. So the preliminary study are extremely important because so the grant application is something that is you need to think that you are trying to convince other people to give you money. So besides being well written, it needs to be formulated on solid hypotheses, and the solid hypotheses are provided by the literature, so that you mentioned in the introduction, but also the preliminary study that you conduct that allow you to formulate hypotheses that then will be addressed. So the preliminary study indicates the feasibility of the project and show as well that you already have the expertise that is required because you did already some work in that direction. And therefore, they also show that at your institution, you are capable to conduct the project. So if you have preliminary data and you do, unless you are applying for a pilot project, so prepare figures that might convince the reviewer then to provide the funds that you need to conduct the study. So before submitting the proposal, you should have already conducted the sub-preliminary or pilot studies. So therefore, provide the data from this study because it's important to show that you have the expertise in the field and know how to conduct the research. It shows that you have done a groundwork on the field. You show that the project is feasible, as indicated by the data that you are highlighting. The hypotheses have merit because they are founded on solid ground. And then you have an institutional support that is adequate to conduct the research. Study limitation, as I said, so be realistic on the limitation of your research and provide a solution in case you face those limitations. So the reviewers need to understand that you are not afraid of finding obstacles in your way, but you know how to overcome those obstacles. So, since your reviewers are likely to be expert in the field, then you should thoroughly explain any realistic limitation of your study to ensure that your project is not criticized as over ambitious. It is best that you assume the viewpoints of the reviewers and anticipate what they might ask and what they will want to know. So imagine when you are reading your grant to be the reviewer of the grant and try to spot some critics that they might provide to your study in order then to avoid those kind of recommendation. The budget needs to be really well outlined because it defined also how is your research in terms of cost, in terms of expenses. So unless you are applying for seeds grants, which we all know that provide you the necessary to start the grant proposal, so all the rest is a consistent amount of money that then needs to be very well explicit according to where you want to invest those money. So the budget needs to contain a tabular outline of the expenses required for your study. And while preparing this, remember to check current prices of the equipment and supplies you need. You cannot request a quotation and then let years pass and then think that potentially a microscope or another kind of equipment you might request in your grant still has the same price. Go over your methods and account for every item listed there. If you are mailing questionnaires to the participants, then you might need also to consider the existing postage rates. But in order to do the budget, sometimes you might even request the help of dedicated services at your universities that I'm sure that are willing to advise you. Personnel. So it needs to indicate the expertise and the contribution of all the team members that are involved in your study, because this will allow the reviewer to show that you have the dream team to conduct the research, that every expertise that you highlight in the methodology, in the research design, and in the objective actually that you want to achieve. So then you have people around you and part of your team that has the necessary knowledge to address that question. So explain staffing requirements in details. Be very explicit about the skill sets of the personnel, showing the researcher possess expertise in the field, and you might even include their CVs or highlight the specific components of their CVs. Provide evidence that all personnel are trained for the research purposes, and that this is referred, for instance, to animal research. You need to upload potential certifications, so this will be useful to the reviewers, or also for human studies. Describe how each research assistant will contribute to recruiting participants, collecting data if you are dealing with the cohorts. So the research environment and the institutional resources, as I said before, are also evaluated, and they need to be emphasized, right? So you need to highlight that the facilities and the services present in your university or your institutes are really state-of-the-art facilities, and the responsible of those facilities are really qualified staff and expert research assistants that have the adequate infrastructure at their disposal for you then to conduct the research, but you need to highlight that they are an added value to the study that you are performing. So you need therefore to convince the reviewer that the university or the institute can aid the success of your study, highlighting that as faculty and staff are expert in the field, so then you might even discuss the project with them. And like this, you might receive constructive criticism while conducting the research. You might need to highlight that your institutes and your university offer unique and adequate facilities in terms of laboratory, library facilities, etc. Sorry, that they do have the team members and the responsible of that facilities, they do have the experience and the qualified and the qualification necessary as a research assistant, and then that they do have an history of credible and high valuable research as a track record to be then of help. So it is useful as well to provide the parts of the funds, to say that the parts of the funds goes to that facility. Sorry. Because imagine that you have to conduct experiments like microscopy experiments. So then you might need to state in your budget that parts of the funds go to really rent the hours dedicated to that experiment, or goes to a genotyping services in your animal facilities, etc. So then there are appendices, right? So which are also called annexes, and is a dedicated space to update all information that you might find as relevant. And these might be samples of the questionnaires that you are using to conduct your surveys, or letters from the department head as a recommendation or guaranteeing that the resources are put at your disposal, or as well the preliminary data extra from the one that you are inserting, or even to assess, for instance, the capacity of your team in related projects, and you might even upload your last manuscripts. So usually, therefore, these annexes has a limited space in terms of megabyte that you can upload. So these are samples of the questionnaires, as I was saying, or instrument that you are planning to use, or supporting letters from your department head or dean guaranteeing that sufficient time and resources will be provided to you for your research, or letter of recommendation from colleagues, supervisor, or former mentors mentioning specific samples of achievement and personal trait ideal for the research. Also, it can contain letters of collaborations with institutions that are not benefiting from these funds, but that are important to your study. So this is the time frame, also called the timeline in the grant proposal, and you need to show graphically when you begin and when you end the study, and how you complete each step. So it's really a visual version of your project, highlighting activities and highlighting, in this case, quarters of the years, but sometimes you might even provide month by month, right? So one thing that I would like to point out that you might get a wrong impression from this timeline is the fact that there are activities that might overlap. So it's not that every grant has needs to finish item one before starting to address objective number two. So there are many activities that can overlap and can be conducted actually in an extensive period that is not what is reflected in this table. So now let me provide you 15 key tips for writing a winning grant proposal, starting by learn more about the funding agency, because you can read the website to then understand the goal of this funding agency. and how your research fits the scope of the agency and will help them to achieve their goal. Then understand which is your target audience. So read about the reviewing committee, decide which aspect of your subject matter needs to be explained in detail. There are many finding agencies that already before starting are giving you a hint about the expertise of the reviewing panel. So therefore, choose wisely as well the reviewing panel you would like to revise your grant proposal. And like this, you might avoid the possible disappointments. And then go through the funder's guidelines for proposal. Make a list of everything you need to do, which question you need to address, sections to include, supporting documents to be submitted, formatting, specification to be considered, etc. When you have to read the guidelines of a proposal, you need to read them with a lot of calm, and you need to interpret every single word, because when they are saying specific items, they really mean it. So your grant needs really to fit every single scope that is written in the guidelines. So then, while you are writing your grant, make sure to talk about the usefulness of your research for scientific development and human knowledge. There is a lot of emphasis nowadays on developing human capital, on knowledge transfer or knowledge exchange. So make use as well of this expression, because indeed it allows the reviewers to say that you are adding knowledge for a purpose. But then highlight what motivates you to choose your research topic. So, which is your driving force to conduct their study, and how your work is aligned with the funding institution mission and vision. Those two items are extremely important, because are the first thing that then the reviewer might want to spot and point out in their recommendation letter. So then how samples are used in the study is widely applicable, and therefore describe very well this session as the expertise and the experience that all researchers have that are included in the team, and detail then how your institution is equipped to support you and the facilities that are offered to help you in conducting your research. Then, which are the problems that you have identified? So this means that you need to read extensively the literature and see how your research might fill the gap, because you need to provide solutions in your study, and which is then the credibility of the methods that you plan to use for the solution that you intended to provide. Those two as well need to be very well highlighted. So then how your study has a focused and measurable aim, and this measurable is a very important word, because the reviewer needs to have something that then might evaluate, something that then you might also provide the midterms reports and following specific evaluation indexes. So you need as well to define the objective in what is called smart way, okay? So, and then the resources you need to plan to use and conduct your research needs to be very well highlighted, as the details of how your study is in compliance with relevant ethics standards, and then how you are equipped to lead your research team in the best possible way. So when you revise your proposal, you need to think that so grant proposal needs a lot of time uh, to be reviewed and to be developed. So you need as well to think that a lot of proposals needs a lot of time to be written. So it's very important, therefore, that you start on time in thinking which could be your next proposal. Uh, there are grants that are very short, meaning that there are grants indeed that you might send first a letter of intent, and then just if you are shortlisted, then you are invited to write the full proposal. But there are indeed proposals that need to be written in just one stage, and therefore you need quite a lot of time to write that as well. So all the grant application, from the writing to the revision and to the attribution, it takes a lot of time. So it's good also, after you write your proposal, if you distribute your proposal to people you trust, and you get the feedback. Most of the time it's also useful for people that are not belonging to our field to read our proposal, because if they understand what we want to do, even if they are not working in our field, so then we might be ensured that the readers as well will understand. Seek out a variety of readers, specialists or not, in your areas or not, and then try to get as many feedback as possible. And you may also want to request assistance from knowledgeable readers on specific areas of your proposal. You might want to schedule a meeting with a statistician to help revise the methodology session. You might want to insert the statistician in the team member, etc. So ask your readers to give careful consideration to whether you made explicit the connections between your research objective and the methodology. So remember that everything needs to be read in a very smooth manner. So you cannot have gaps, because usually the reviewers has not just your grant to review. They do have a series of proposals, and if they find that is too much disconnected, then they are not going back and forth. They are simply discarding it, saying that the proposal was not well written. So remember to present in a very efficient manner the compelling case, so the case that you made, the hypothesis, try to be as explicit as possible. Does your proposed project seem feasible? So explain very well that. Try not to appear ambitious, and try to spot each weaknesses that might then be criticized by the reviewer, and try to address that. So have you stated that means that the grantors can use to evaluate the success of your project after you have executed it? So just ask your question to yourself and see whether you can improve your writing. If a granting agency lists particular criteria used for rating and evaluating proposal, and usually they do, be sure to share these with your own reviewers. So usually they say that the curricula of the team members accounts for that percentage, and the projects account for that percentage. So like this, you know what you should increase in terms of what you can concentrate the most your effort. So, how do you avoid grant proposal writing rejection? So these are some tips. So to feature a good grant proposal and writing should have clarity. So the clarity of what you do, the clarity of the proposal itself, the clarity of the formulated hypothesis, etc. It should be clear, and it should flow well. You should state the objectives of the research and how you plan to attain them, and ensure that all objectives directly relate to your hypothesis. The grant committee will understand the clear truth behind the proposal. So mention then the potential impact of the proposed research, because most granting agencies expect the proposal to be holistic. So the proposal whose impact can extend beyond the research labs and benefit a larger group can likely get accepted. And I'm making here an example of society. So, if your proposal can bring about a collaboration between discipline, have multiple use, influence students' learning, or inspire further research, it has more chances to be endorsed. Maintain a realistic approach, so your proposal should provide a logistic and a realistic account of the method you intend to use and the estimated timelines and resources required. A proposal promising to deliver precise results may not get a positive response because you never know the results that you are obtaining. Instead, the grant makers might prefer a proposal that can provide interesting results, even if all objectives are not met. So remember that you are adding knowledge, okay? And in science, as you know, is not everything right or left. So it needs really to be interesting, also in terms of added value. Why grant proposal writing are rejected? So the proposal possibly might not be suitable for the agency, or is badly written, or is not persuasive, or it lacks citation, or even if they have citation, the citation needs to be recent. You can cite a seminal paper, but you cannot found the proposal based on references that are dated 30 years ago. Your proposal should be written such that the grant committee is convinced about the potential high impact and importance. And then you might provide a background for the idea and citing research that prompt your idea to give them a solid foundation of your proposal. So, what you should do if your grant proposal has been rejected? There is something that you might be upset, but you need always to take advantage of the recommendation that you get. So read the reviewer's comment carefully, because they might have pointed out some problems that you want to address then in the future. Then check with the granting committee if you can resubmit that proposal. And if resubmission is not an option, find another agency that is better suited with your proposal. Ultimately, treat the grant application process as a learning experience. You never learn how to write a successful proposal from one day to the other. It's a process. So just take it as a process. How is the impact of publication evaluated during the review of a grant in aid application? So the number of publication is given importance along with other factors such as the reputation of the authors, right? And the impact of the impact factor of the journal in which you have published the paper. The nature and the significance of the results. Breakthrough results will give a priority. And then the impact factor of the journal in which you have published is given preference, as a higher impact factor indicates a superior quality of your research. Indeed, this is important. However, that does not necessarily mean that you exclude articles published in lower impact factor journals, because the chances of receiving a grant are greater when you have a longer publication list. So nowadays, there is a huge discussion regarding the impact factor of the journal, right? So indeed, there are top quality journals that the credibility and reputation of the journal is undiscussed, but as well, sometimes there are very important data that are published in medium low impact factor journals, but are very important to society. So you need, therefore, this is my advice, to cite what is important to your research regardless. The number of publication and high impact factor journal publication is something that your reviewer might indeed look at. So these are general tips. So try to begin as early as possible to write your proposal, apply early and often. Do not forget to include a cover letter with your application, answer all questions. If rejected, revise it and then apply again. Give the reviewer what they want, the agency what they want. Be explicit and specific. Be realistic in designing the project. Make explicit the connection between your research question and objective, your objective and methods, your methods and results, and your results and dissemination plan, because this is very important as well to show that you are disseminating the knowledge that you are producing, and then follow the application guidelines exactly. So I will be very happy now to reply questions and doubts that you might have, because indeed I'm here to help. So I really would like to thank you for your consideration and for your time invested in this webinar. My name is Raffaella Gozzellino. I will stop sharing my screen to then reply to your question. Thank you. Okay, so let's see the first question. Could you please share your experiences with submitting research proposal for substantial findings? My experience. Sorry, I got cold. My experience when writing when submitting proposal for fundings it's something that is a learning process, right? So the first time that I wrote a proposal, if I would need to submit the same proposal, I would rather say no, because indeed it was not well written. As I said, there is many things that need to be learned, and many things that is going to be learned, but in a process, right? So my experience with the funding agency is that you really need to read carefully the guidelines of the proposal, and most of the time allow other people to read them as well, because there are specific terminologies that are used that allow you to understand what the agency wants and what the reviewer wants. And providing those guidelines to different people, that you might have different feedbacks. The higher the value that is attributed to a grant, the higher the necessity to show that the proposal is well written, that the proposal is well fundamented, that the proposal is really has everything it needs to be conducted, from the team to the state of the art, etc. But remember, the higher the value attributed, the more difficult sometimes is to get the proposal attributed, awarded, right? Because there are more money and you need to better convince the granting agency to provide the award. There are also advices that your specific department might also provide, because indeed remember that they are dedicated person. So, but my learning process is really continuous, because we never stop learning, and the new requirements are always advertised by the agency itself. So I'm a group leader since 2015, so I have been quite successful in writing grant proposal, but indeed we can never said that every grant we wrote so then was awarded, because as I said, it's something that we learn day by day. Next question is how should researchers adapt their grant writing strategies in response to evolving trends and priorities within the funding agency? So, the priorities of the funding agencies are very well stated in the guidelines and in their website. So this means that you don't need to adapt your proposal. You need simply to see and to evaluate whether your proposal fits in the scope of the agency. If it doesn't fit, you cannot adapt your writing, but simply you choose another agency to submit your proposal, because it will allow the reviewer to really know that the agency is the best entity to finance your proposal. This is something that so if you write a proposal that then does not fit the scope, you might even be rejected for that reason, right? Because the proposal does not fit what the agency would have liked to award. So please, therefore, do not think that you need to adapt. Think that you need to fit in specific pillars, because this is the only way you will not commit any mistake, and your proposal will have the chance to be attributed. Do you think the grant proposal should be according to the budget? Small grant proposal cannot be as detailed as big grant proposal. What is your take on that? Indeed. So if you write a grant proposal for a small award or for a small grant, the same way that you are writing a grant proposal to request $2 million, so then the reviewers is spotting that there is something that does not fit, because it would not be possible, and you will be, let's say, accused to be over ambitious. And this, if a reviewer state that you are over ambitious, is because your project is completely unfeasible according to the review itself. So small grants need, therefore, to be very well described in terms of objectives, but realistic with the budget that they do have at their disposal. And that is extremely important. You can write in a simple way, but specifically I'm referring to the tasks. So the task that you are undertaking needs to be very correlated to the budget that you are asking. Okay. Other questions that you might have, please put them in the chat. So I think that I replied to all questions, and I will leave then Dr. Zaki to take the stage.
Yeah, hello. Hello. Thank you, Dr. Avella, for sharing your expertise for grant writing. And also, I want to thank you for making this webinar an exciting experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will speak now in Arabic. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أنا حابب أعرف عن حالي أولاً، اللي أتوقع في بعضكم يعرفني. أنا الدكتور زكي سليمان. أنا ممثل شركة إديتاج هنا المملكة العربية السعودية، وحاب أشكركم جميعاً على حضوركم لهذه الندوة، وأتمنى تكون الأمور اللي شرحتها الدكتورة تكون واضحة. وفي حال عندكم أي استفسار، الرجاء من الجميع عدم التردد في إرسالها على الإيميل الخاص بخدمة العملاء. بس كنت حاب أنوه على نقطة، إنه في الآن بارتنرشيب موجودة بين جامعة جدة وشركة إديتاج. الاتفاقية طبعا تنص على وجود بارتنر ويب سايت حيكون في جميع الخدمات اللي تساعد على دعم البحث العلمي اللي يحتاجها الباحث، ابتداء من المانسكريبت preparation, editing, staff analysis, الجورنال selection او even الببليكيشن سبورت. اتوقع الزملاء هنا شاركوا معكم الرابط، بس انا حاب انوه انه جميع الخدمات الموجوده كما متفق عليها مع الجامعه فيها 40% ديسكاونت. وكشكر من شركه إديتاج راح ارسل لكم الان كوبون في اكسترا 10% ديسكاونت. ممكن طبعا تستفيدوا منه للي عنده بحث الان او شاركوه مع زملائكم. اذا في عندكم اي سؤال لي انا حاضر. التسجيل راح يكون موجود باذن الله وراح نرسل لكم. شكرا جزيلا. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.